October 12, 1993, central Bosnia. A British army convoy crawls along a narrow mountain road scarred by months of fighting. The route is dangerous. Small arms fire echoes from distant hillsides, and every bend in the road could conceal an ambush. Leading part of the convoy is a vehicle many British soldiers have already developed a love-hate relationship with, the AT-105 Saxon. To some troops, it was underpowered, awkward-looking and uncomfortable. Critics mocked its truck-like appearance and questioned whether it belonged anywhere near a battlefield. Yet, despite years of complaints, criticism and repeated attempts to replace it, the Saxon kept showing up. And somehow, the vehicle many soldiers loved to complain about simply refused to die. So, why? The answer begins with what the Saxon was actually designed to be. Unlike purpose-built armoured personnel carriers that were created from the ground up for combat, the AT-105 Saxon had a much simpler origin. In the late Cold War, the British Army needed a cheap way to move troops safely through areas threatened by small arms fire and shrapnel. Building thousands of expensive armoured vehicles wasn't practical. The solution was surprisingly straightforward. Take a commercial truck chassis, add armour, give it enough protection to move soldiers through dangerous areas, and keep the cost as low as possible. The result was the Saxon. At first glance, it looked more like an armoured delivery truck than a military vehicle. That appearance would become one of its biggest problems. Soldiers naturally compared it to tracked armoured personnel carriers like the FV-432 or later vehicles designed specifically for frontline combat. But it was good enough at many things. That practicality explains why it appeared in places far beyond the Cold War battlefield it had originally been designed for. British forces used Saxons during operations in Northern Ireland, where protection against small arms fire and improvised threats mattered far more than tank versus tank combat. The vehicle later appeared in peacekeeping missions throughout the Balkans. Again and again, the same pattern emerged. The Saxon wasn't glamorous. It wasn't heavily armed. It wasn't revolutionary. But it got soldiers where they needed to go. And often, that was exactly what commanders required. By the early 2000s, however, warfare was changing. The rise of powerful roadside bombs and increasingly sophisticated insurgent tactics exposed limitations in many older armoured vehicles. New generations of mine-resistant vehicles began taking over roles the Saxon had once performed. Many assumed the vehicle's long career was finally ending. Yet even then, the Saxon refused to disappear completely. Some remained in service abroad. Others were transferred to foreign militaries. Decades after critics first dismissed it as little more than an armoured truck, the vehicle was still finding new operators willing to use it. And that's the real reason the AT-105 Saxon became one of Britain's most stubborn military survivors. It succeeded because it solved a practical problem. Not perfectly, not elegantly, but affordably. The Saxon was never meant to be a battlefield superstar. It was meant to be a protected truck that could move soldiers safely through dangerous environments. And for decades, it did exactly that. Which is why the rejected British Army truck that countless soldiers complained about never truly disappeared. Because while troops often criticised its shortcomings, armies kept discovering something far more important. Replacing a vehicle that reliably gets the job done is much harder than complaining about it.